Hello, science enthusiasts. Welcome to SciChat. It's our weekly show on Tuesdays where we invite an expert to talk about their area of knowledge. My name is Jason Zakowski, aka Dad Guy. I'm the dog dad of Bunsen and Beaker. My co-host is
Chris Zakowski, aka Mummy Fave, and I am the dog mom of Bunsen and Beaker and the cat mom of Ginger.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Ginger.
Meow, you always do.
And our guest today is the fantastic T. Francis. T, how are you doing tonight?
Hi there. I'm doing really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I thought I would just mention, not to bring a downer to the space, but if you've been following us on social media, our family had a tragedy that happened in all of August. And sadly, we lost our mom, actually early this morning. And I decided, should we continue with this space or not? And I think it's good for me to continue it. I had a lot of messages saying, should you cancel the space? Should you cancel the show? And I decided, you know what? It's good to just get back into the swing of things and talk science. So I thought I would mention that. I apologize for it being a bit of a downer to start with and taking a bit away from our amazing guests, but I did want to just mention that. Okay, so we got that out of the way. T, where are you in the world?
I am just outside London in the UK, where it is very late at night / early in the morning.
Yes.
But that's, nighttime is the right time.
Well, thank you. If you people heard in the preamble, we were talking about how late it is for you, and thank you for staying up. I don't know if I'd be able to stay up. I'd have to drink like about 4 liters of coffee, I think, to do it. So thank you. And T, you are a spider expert. Could you talk to us a little bit about your training in science?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of formal training, I have a bachelor's in animal biology and ecology. Mm-hmm. That was a long time ago. And in the time since I graduated from university with that, and now I've done a lot of different things. And it was only really at the beginning of the pandemic. No, maybe a few months before that. Before the pandemic hit, I'd started thinking about going back to my education, continuing my education, getting my master's and hopeful eventual PhD and pursuing arachnology. And then, like I said, the pandemic hit and I realized that things were perhaps not going to be quite that simple. So I thought, well, I'm just going to throw myself into it anyway. And I'm going to do as much of this as I can off my own back, because I figure when the time comes that I am able to apply and to pursue my education, the more I've done in the meantime to show that I'm active in the field is going to benefit me, So I've been doing all kinds of stuff with all kinds of different people. I've been offered some really amazing opportunities. I've been able to work on some really exciting things. Not everything has gone according to plan. I should be in Ecuador right now, which we covered when we did the podcast.
Yes.
But unfortunately, my health has not been the best, so I had to bow out of that. And these things, they happen. It's all beyond my control, so I'm just taking it in stride as best I can and trying to sort of remain as involved as I can in the meantime. So I have got a lot of spider stuff going on here, but it's all from the comfort of my own home.
So let's get right to talking about spiders. Is that okay, T?
Absolutely.
Full disclosure, T was on the Science Podcast. I think your episode was out about a month and a half ago. And I had a follow-up list of questions about a mile long on my document. Because every time I threw something at you about spiders, you just had the answer, and we went down a rabbit hole after rabbit hole. So my first question's really general, and it's a fun one. It's the same one I asked on the podcast. And that's just talk to us about spiders. What do you love about them? What do you love so much about spiders?
Everything. Everything. You'll have to excuse me. I'm trying to sort of keep my voice down because there's people in my house who are asleep. But this is a subject that I get really animated about. So I might have someone burst in here and tell me to shut up in a minute. But no, everything, honestly. There are so many different types of spiders, so many different things that they do. So, I mean, to break it down into the really, really simple things, like just the way they look, there's so many different spiders and with different kind of features that they're just so wildly different from one another, and yet they all have the sort of similarities, 8 legs, cephalothorax, an abdomen, all that kind of stuff. But they're just the basic components, then everything else is just like all these crazy differences from one family to the next. And then all of the differences in the diversity in their behavior, like their hunting behavior, the way they do or don't use their silk, the way they've evolved to interact with their environment and the other creatures they share it with. It's all so insanely fascinating. Like it just lights me up like nothing else. So yeah, everything.
Everything. Now, spiders get a bad rap, right?
Yeah.
Like, I tweeted about this and I got like a couple people messaged it and they're like, I'd like to come, but I'm scared of spiders, or just straight up ew. Now that's not me, but spiders do have that bad rap. What do you want the public to know about spiders?
I want the public to know that most of the things they know about spiders are not rooted in reality. Spiders, among other creatures that are much maligned by pop culture and the media, they have got a bad rap, and it's because, perhaps there's some innate throwback response to things that can hurt us that plays a part. But in my opinion, the very, very vast majority of the reasons that people have for disliking spiders is purely media driven. And I mean, that's maybe a very broad statement, not just media driven, but culturally driven. It's a societal thing. People are just weirded out by things that are perhaps not cute and fluffy, or that occupy, dark and scary areas, or that have something about them that are just a little bit unsettling. So, spiders have been used to conjure an atmosphere of creepiness, or something bad in movies and TV and everything. It's like if you're watching TV and somebody walks into a dark room and there's cobwebs everywhere, you can be pretty certain they're not about to have a surprise birthday party. Something bad's probably about to happen to them in there, And it's the same with things like bats and rats and, cockroaches, all these kind of things. They're used to portray like an image or a feeling of darkness and just unsettling kind of bad sort of vibes. And I mean, it's a cop out. It's a total cop out to rely on things like that to get your point across. So what I would like the public to know and people to know is that there is so much more to spiders and to all of the creatures I've just mentioned than you're shown, and there's nothing to be afraid of anywhere near what you're kind of made to feel there is to be afraid of. So people are worried about being bitten by spiders and that they're going to be envenomated and killed or maimed or something. There are so few spiders in the world that are capable of that kind of damage. Even the ones that we have come to accept as being dangerous, like in America, for example, black widows and brown recluses, they can't do anywhere near the damage that people are led to believe they can. Most of the time, if anyone's bitten by a spider like that, the biggest problem they have is, secondary infection from the bite site, which you can get in any break to the skin. If you get a bacterial infection in a wound of any sort, you can have a pretty bad time. Now, I'm not saying that medically significant spiders aren't capable of doing some damage with a bite, but what I am saying is that the vast majority of the time it's nowhere near as bad as people expect it to be or think it's going to be. So this idea that spiders are terrifying and scary and capable of doing all this horrendous damage, it's way overblown. So what I'd like for people to try and do is to maybe put that aside as much as they can and just open their minds a little bit to the fascinating and the beautiful and the just mind-blowingly awesome things about spiders, of which there are far more than there are scary things. So
now, you said that spiders aren't cute and fluffy. We talked on the podcast about this one type of spider with the googly eyes. What spider is it? Because it's adorable. It's actually super cute.
Okay, so that'll be the jumping spiders.
Yeah, the jumping spiders. They got these like cute little adorable googly eyes, right?
Yeah, totally. See, now when I said a minute ago that they're not cute and fluffy, it's like that's what people on the whole think.
Oh,
personally, I think I've got a list as long as my arm of cute fluffy spiders I could show anyone who's willing to give me a few minutes to listen and look. But yeah, we in the spider community tend to refer to jumping spiders as the gateway spider. So, you might think of, weed as a gateway drug into the world of, terrible things. So it's like, okay, well, let's flip that on its head for a second. We've got jumping spiders are the gateway spider into the wonderful world of cute, fluffy, adorable spiders that are nothing to be afraid of. You see? So, yeah, jumping spiders. I think, some of your listeners will be familiar with Lucas the spider, this little CGI character that's popped up on the internet and has captured the hearts of millions of people. And that is exactly the kind of pro-spider propaganda I'm all about. So anything that gets people to see them or think about them in a different way to that they might usually is a huge plus in my book. So yeah, Lucas the spider and any other there's images that float around on the internet that come up every now and then of jumping spiders. They've been beautifully photographed. They might have a lovely brightly colored background and a little water droplet on their head, and it's like, oh, jumping spiders wearing water droplets as hats. I mean, the reality is the water droplet has probably been put there by the photographer for effect, or it's a very, very lucky sort of coincidence that they found one with a dewdrop on their head. It's not something the spider's done on purpose, but it does.
Yeah, because the hats that Bunsen and Beaker wear in pictures, they just show up on their heads magically as well. So
yeah, totally. It happens a lot with cute animals. They just happen to have something adorable going on, and it's like, we're going to make the most of this. So these are the kind of photos that I go to straight away. If anyone says to me, I was like, oh, spiders are gross, they're so scary, they're so, they're not. And here's my evidence, So yeah, these photos are definitely a good place to start. Jumping spiders on the whole are a good place to start, especially the genus Phidippus, which is present in the United States. There's Phidippus regius has become a very popular spider that's kept as pets. They're quite large for jumping spiders. Jumping spiders aren't big spiders. We'll get that out of the way straight away. The largest jumping spider that I've ever encountered was not as big as, one of our house spiders here, or, a reasonably sized orb weaver that you might see in your garden. They're not big spiders. So Phidippus regius, the regal jumping spider, which is native to Florida, the Bahamas, Cuba, surrounding areas, so sort of like the more tropical climates in the US and surrounding areas. That spider is very fluffy and cute. And it's also very inquisitive. So a lot of people have cottoned on to the fact that as a pet, it's not just something that you can observe, it's something that you can, to an extent, interact with, because they will watch you, you'll see them turning their head to watch whatever you're doing. And sometimes you can get them accustomed to being handled. So you can actually have one wander around on your hand, hop from one hand to the other. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They're not, okay, we'll get any ideas that you can train or tame a spider to the same extent that you can a cat or a dog out of the way, but they do have the capacity to learn certain things.
Cool.
And there have been studies conducted by people that have involved training them to do certain things. So if they want to study, say, jumping behavior or courtship behavior or something, they've worked with them and gotten them accustomed to certain cues and to certain things, objects or movements, or things like laser pointers. Even they've gotten them accustomed to working with certain cues to get them to do things that they then study. So there's a lot of interest in sort of the level of intelligence that spiders, like jumping spiders, have, and the ways that they interact with their environment. How much of it is just instinctive and how much of it is actually sort of a cognitive thing? How much of it are they actually analyzing? And a very, very interesting study has come out recently, and I mean very recently, last couple of weeks, that hints at them dreaming. So you think of like REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. It's a very understudied area of like of the human brain. So it's not much. There's a lot about it that we don't know, but there's been studies carried out recently involving jumping spiders that suggest that there might possibly be something going on very similar to rapid eye movement sleep when they are resting. And the way they've observed this is they can't move their eyes the same way that we can, but their retina, moves. And in certain species that have a certain amount of transparency to their exoskeleton, or in juveniles of other species that don't have this transparency as adults, you can actually see those retinal movements. It's the posterior and median eyes, so the largest forward-facing pair of eyes. You can see quite clearly in certain lights and in certain species the retina of those eyes moving. And they've managed to record this movement in spiders at rest. So the spider, there's an image that was floating, a video that was floating around on Twitter in the last week or two that accompanied the announcement of this study. I did retweet it, so if you go back through my retweets, you'll find it. It's not that long ago. There's a video of a spider dangling from a thread of silk, and it's obviously resting, but its legs are twitching and it's moving the same way that you would think of like a dog or a cat twitching in its sleep, and they've shown a little clip of the eye movements, that they've seen these spiders who are resting, these eyes are moving. So they're now wondering, like, what is going on in there? Like, are they actually dreaming? And if so, what are they dreaming about? Because that is just insanely cool.
That is
it's
so
amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So it's things like that. It's things like that I want people to know about. I don't want people to keep reading things in the newspaper on a slow news day, as if in this, the Lord's year 2022, there's such a thing as a slow news day. On a slow news day, whatever that is these days, people will print things like deadly false widows sweeping across the UK. People are having legs amputated because of necrotic lesions and all this kind of stuff. It's like, put that down. Stop reading that garbage. If you want me to tell you all of the reasons why that's absolute nonsense, I gladly will. But, you're going to sit down and you're going to listen to me and take it in. Let's just read about spiders dreaming instead and focus on something cool and amazing and cute, and something that's going to change your perception of them, because that's what I'm all about. That's what I want people to read about.
Oh, I love it. T, you're so passionate. I so appreciate you having you as a guest. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
If you're just tuning in right now, hello, this is Science Chat. My name is Jason. I'm the host. We have a guest, T. Francis, arachnologist, with us talking about spiders. We just finished talking about dreaming spiders, which is wild. After a couple more questions, we're going to open up the floor to the audience to ask their own questions. And remember, folks, we now have Twitter Chat, which is the feature in Spaces where you can post comments. And some of you have been doing that, which I really appreciate that. I'm not sure how to say this person's name because it's not in English, but it's at T-Driven Dev. Says, jumping spiders would still totally kill you if they could. To which I responded, as would cats. Oh,
yeah.
And then Hogan says, T. Francis is the best. So we don't have any questions yet, but we got a shout out for T in the comments. Now, I've got a couple more questions for you. I was wondering if you could talk to us about, we talked about the jumping spider, a couple of the more fascinating spiders that you know about that would kind of blow people's mind a bit. They could be your favorite spider, or they could be just a really cool spider.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Queens on the Road podcast. This is Latavia here. This podcast was created to educate and inspire people about the ably different community who are on the move. So come roll with us. We educate and have a little fun too. Is that I have something that is called a helix vulgus, which is like a bunion that people with CP get on their feet.
Putting me on the spot.
Yes, I'm quizzing you now. What is my favorite movie? I'm putting this friendship to the test.
So let me think, because last time I spoke to you, I think we talked about net casting spiders, which are one of my all-time favorites, and I'm very happy to talk about them again.
And I think we also... Go ahead.
Yeah. We also talked about tarantulas keeping frogs as pets.
Yeah, the tarantulas keeping frogs as pets. I can listen to both of those again, but if go ahead, or if you got a different one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because I mean those are the ones that always come to mind. And of course, now that I'm on the spot thinking about it, you know what? I was lying here earlier thinking, oh, I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about this, and it's all gone.
Well, let's do the net cat. Let's do those two. They're fascinating. I'm sure some people, not everybody's heard that, listens to my podcast. I wish you would do that. Listen to my podcast, but that's okay.
That's cool. Okay, so net casting spiders. There are a couple present in the United States. There's a lot of them in Australia and in Africa. I'm not sure about Asian species, but I'm sure they're around. But anyway, they are of the family Dinopidae. The genus Dinopus is the one that I'm thinking of particularly. They are a species of spider that has developed a way of hunting that is unique to that family, involving spinning a net out of their silk and holding it out in front of them, suspended by held by their two front pairs of legs. So the first pair and the second pair, they hold the four corners of this net out in front of them, and then they suspend themselves from a couple of support lines of silk that they've attached to surrounding objects using their rear two pairs of legs. And they sit there and they wait for something to pass by within range. And when prey passes by within range, they lunge forward with this net and they swipe it, and they basically just catch it like it was a fish out of water with a catch net, like people do. These things grab bugs with these nets. Now, the cool thing about the silk, I've kept these before and I've been able to watch them spinning these nets, which is just incredible. I have got video of it somewhere, and I'm sure I'll have posted it on Twitter, but it will have been a couple of years ago now. But anyway, I digress. They are cribulate spiders. Now, cribulate spiders are a group of spiders that have a special kind of apparatus for spinning a certain kind of silk. The best way I can describe that apparatus to people who don't want me to go into stupid scientific terminologies is it's like a sieve or a colander. So if you imagine it's like a plate with a load of holes in it, load of little spigots in it.
Now, spaghetti strainers.
Yeah, pretty much. So whereas spiders that do not have this, spiders known as ecribulate spiders, they just spin like a regular strand of silk. Cribulate spiders, silk passes through this plate. It's called the cribellum, which is why they're called cribulate spiders. So the silk passes through all these spigots in the cribellum, and the result is loads and loads and loads of super fine strands of silk. Now, cribulate spiders also have another apparatus called the calamistrum, which is on the rearmost pair of legs. It's a row of bristles that basically is a bit like a comb. So what they do is when they're passing these loads of strands of superfine silk through their cribellum, on its way out, they start back combing it, like we used to do to our hair in the 80s. They used to back comb this silk and make it all fluffy. And then once they've fluffed up the silk, they then sort of arrange it into this net. And it's the most incredible, fascinating thing to watch. Now, the cool thing about cribulate silk is that it's not sticky like glue sticky. It's sticky like Velcro sticky. So it kind of relies on a certain amount of electromagnetism, but it's also like a mechanical kind of sticky. So if you imagine you're a bug, like a cricket or something that's got quite a lot of spines on its legs, or, spiky hairs that are supposed to deter things from eating you, those things get caught up in cribulate silk real nice. Nice. So anything like a cricket or, say like a fly or even other spiders, anything that's got like a whole bunch of legs and like a chitinous exoskeleton with protrusions of whatever type, wings, or like I say, leg spines or hairs, anything, that kind of stuff gets caught up in cribulate silk really, really easy. So there are other types of cribulate spiders like crevice weavers in the USA, and I'm not sure about Canada. I don't know. I'm sure you've got some description, but in the USA, certainly there's a genus, Cuckolcania is called. They're known as house spiders. So there's Arizona, I think Arizona black hole spider. I'm not sure. And I don't know, they've got all kinds of common names, but they're cribulate spiders and they spin like this fluffy sort of web. I've got two of them about 6 feet away from me right now. And whenever I chuck a cricket in there, as soon as it touches that silk, it's stuck. It doesn't even have to struggle. It's just like its feet get stuck in it. And it's just that the more it moves, the more it entangles itself. The spider really doesn't have to do much. It just feels the movement. It rushes out. It delivers a bite. It takes a step back for a minute. And once the prey is subdued by the venom that's just been delivered and caught up beyond any salvation in that silk. The spider can go in at its leisure and finish the job. So with the net casting spiders, they have a little bit more of an active role in that. They don't just wait for something to stumble into their web and get caught up in it. They will seize it with that net, and they will, they'll wrap it up to an extent pretty much just by throwing the net around it and just making sure it's well and truly in there. They don't really do any, how you see like orb weaver spiders with the big round webs in your garden. If a fly flies into that, they rush out and they start sort of trussing it up in silk. They're spinning it and they're wrapping it in silk. These guys don't do that, because by grabbing something in its net, that's pretty much already done. So if it's something quite large, they'll deliver a bite, and then they might just leave it hanging in their net for a while and take a step back, wait for their venom to take effect so that they can go in and start feeding on it safely without any worry of being bitten or stung or, whatever, by whatever it is they've just caught. So it's ingenious. It's absolutely incredible. It's amazing to watch. It's amazing to think that that's an innate behavior that is not taught to them by their parents. They just know how to do it. It's like these things are just incredible, so.
It's so intricate too, like their battle plans, and then even how they make the silk is so different from other spiders. Like it's just bananas.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And when it's freshly spun in the right light, it's almost blue. It's so bright white. It's like if you hit it with a cool white LED torch or like flashlight, that silk just glows. It's absolutely amazing. The other thing to mention about net casting spiders that I did touch on when we spoke on the podcast, I don't know that this has necessarily been 100% proven, but it's something that's been observed. It may be mostly anecdotal. I'm not sure what the status is on that at the moment, but it is said that certain species of Dinopus, net casting spiders, use their own poop as like a target / depth perception apparatus, as it were. So spider poop is white, like a lot of the time it's white. So they will position themselves somewhere and then they'll drop a blob of poop on the ground beneath them. And if they see something pass above it, over that poop, they know it's within range, so they can strike and grab it, and they know they're in with a good shot of actually getting it in their net. So it's a way of them figuring out, like I said, depth perception. It's like if something crosses over that, it's within my reach. So that's like almost like a target kind of thing. It's just, these things just blow my mind on a daily basis.
It's so cool.
It really is.
So one more time, if you're just joining us for Science Chat, my name's Jason, and I have the amazing T. Francis, arachnologist, with us today talking about spiders. T, can you talk to us about the spiders that keep frogs as pets?
Yes. So talking about keeping them as pets, this is a very anthropomorphized way of describing what happens.
Touche.
But I will say, most of the time I'm not on board with anthropomorphizing animals at all. I think it's dangerous and harmful. But when it comes to spiders, it's like a silver bullet for me when it comes to trying to get people on board with them who are afraid of spiders. A little bit of anthropomorphizing, I can't speak. Whatever. Anyway, a little bit of assigning human-like emotions and feelings to animals is a good thing when it comes to trying to get people on board with spiders, because if you can give them something to relate to, if you can give them something to kind of go, oh, about, instead of, then, that's a good thing. We can move on to why anthropomorphizing things is bad later on, but if I want to just get them through the door, I'll totally stoop that low. So to talk about these spiders that keep frogs as pets, it's a mutually beneficial relationship between the frogs and the spiders. Now, I know it's been observed in South American tarantulas of the genus Pamphobeteus, possibly Xenithis, and I'm not sure if there are others. And I know also some of the Asian spiders, I believe, have been observed to do something similar. Unless I'm very much mistaken, the frogs in question are all microhylid frogs, which are a particular type of frog. And what happens basically is these frogs live in the burrows that the spiders live in. The spiders create the burrows. They're like silk-lined burrows that the spiders have dug out, and that's where they live. And they tend to spend most of their time in these burrows until the males mature and go off in search of females. So these spiders hang out in these burrows pretty much all the time. If they hunt, if they hunt something outside of the burrow and bring it back in, there's going to be food debris that's going to be attracting things like ants and other pest creatures that are going to be too small for the spiders to want to deal with. So the frogs act as a sort of cleanup crew for those things. They eat the insects and potential pests that the spiders are not interested in, or that are perhaps too small for the spiders to bother with or even be able to catch. I mean, if you're a massive, great big tarantula with fangs like the size of my thumbnail, it's going to be pretty hard to catch an ant. You know what I mean? A tiny little ant, like how that's going to take some aim. And considering these things' eyes are like on top of their head and they're terrible for seeing anyway, like I don't fancy their chances of actually being able to accurately catch an ant properly like that, you know. So the frogs step in. The frogs, they live in the burrows rent free. I suppose the rent that they pay is keeping these things under control. But these spiders have been observed because, like I said, they don't have great eyesight. The way they hunt is by sensing vibrations and movement. Obviously, these frogs move and they cause the same kind of vibrations and movement that certain prey animals would create. And they're also perfect size for these spiders to eat. So it has been observed that juvenile spiders that are sort of kind of getting used to this whole thing have responded to the movement of these frogs, and they have rushed at them, and they've kind of got there and they've touched them, and they've realized, oh, hang on a minute, this is one of those frogs. They might give it like a little test bite, little test nibble. Those fangs might like come forward a little bit and sort of like, you know, but they don't bite them. They don't envenomate them. They don't go for the frogs.
So cool.
It's just one of those things that we're looking into, that we're figuring out. You know, it's like I'm a bit behind on, you know, whether there's been any developments since we spoke before. I haven't been reading about this particular topic, so it may be that I'm giving you some outdated information here. There may be solid answers for this now, and I'm sure some of the guys who are listening in will know. But as far as I'm aware, you know, these are things that we're still trying to figure out, you know, how this actually came about and how it is that they know not to go for the frogs. You know, it's like, is there a first time where they eat a frog and then all of a sudden there's bugs everywhere and they're like, God damn, I shouldn't have done that. But
Mistake.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll just get some more frogs in here. I promise I'll look after you. But you see, this is the thing, you know, the frogs, what they get from this relationship is they get to live in a burrow with a massive spider that will absolutely destroy anything that might be coming in there after the frog. So, you know, they get a meal and they get protection. And the spiders get a nice clean burrow that, you know, doesn't have any pests in there, and a little frog to hang out with if we're going to anthropomorphize them.
What's the size difference between this tarantula and the frog? Like, okay,
well, if we're talking about like Pantherbeteus species tarantulas, these are big.
They're the big ones, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not Goliath birdie to. I hate the words birdie to for spiders, but that's the common name that a lot of people recognize. They're not those. So the Goliath bird eaters are Theraphosa species. There are 3 Theraphosa species. Pantherbeteus is a different genus, but I mean, they are up there size-wise. We're talking a leg span of a good, like, I don't know, I want to say 7-8 inches, maybe getting on for that sort of size. You know, the leg span on it would take up most of the space on a dinner plate. They're huge. So we're talking like microhylid frogs, I guess maybe big ones, say like 2 to 3 inch body length. So
the size of your thumb, like about the size, a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I'd say probably about thumb size, but some of these are much smaller than that. So some of these frogs are like, you know, like the size of your thumb pad or something. They're small. They're definitely
they are like tiny compared to these giant spiders.
Yeah. I mean, these spiders tower over these little frogs. You know, we're not talking about an equal match for size here. We're saying what we're talking about is if the spider did decide that this frog was annoying, it'd be over in seconds. You know, the frog wouldn't stand a chance.
There's probably some like super annoying frog that occasionally is like, you know, hey, Kermit the Frog here, and it was like trying to do some kind of news report, and it just got 8, and you know, that was the end of the annoying frog line.
That spider is like 3 strikes and you're out, little guy. I swear to God, say that to me one more time. But yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. It's very cool, and you know, for it to have been seen in South America and Asia, means that these things have like evolved to do this independently of one another in different places in the world. And that's just like so cool. So unbelievably cool. So yeah.
That I could listen to you tell. This is the second time I've heard the story from you, and it just is, I just love it so much. It's just one of those things in nature that you're right. Like, we probably shouldn't anthropomorphize too much. And we do that with animals too, all the time, to their detriment sometimes, especially like dogs and cats. We're like, like we think it's acting like a person and it's not. There's that. There was a big thing we had that we talked about that on the podcast a couple months ago about guilt. Like, dogs they, for all we think of, dogs actually don't feel guilt. They just don't have that human emotion. But
but they've got the guilty face.
Exactly. That's where it comes from, right? The guilty face has nothing to do with actually feeling guilt. It's like a defense. It's a defense mechanism. But this one is just, I think this one's just so cool. Some people are commenting in the chat about this story. Kimberly Bond says, I think we just found a new Netflix show, Spider and Tiny Frog.
Oh my God, sign me up.
Can you imagine? That would be such a cool, like a giant tarantula and this little frog that rides on its back or something like that, right?
Netflix, if you're listening, I will write that for you. They've listened
to a couple of our spaces before, but it's been about dogs, not about spiders.
So you see, now this is the thing, like, get spiders on there and you're covering a whole new thing that not a lot of people have done. People are going to love it. Get in touch. I'm right here.
That's right. So I've got one more question before we get to the audience, and that's about your artistry and your photography. I'd love for you just to talk to us a little bit about what you do with that, because on your Instagram, for example, you take these amazing photos of spiders.
Yeah. It's something that I fell into because of spiders. I was not a photographer before I was a spider enthusiast. I started out with a macro lens clip-on attachment for my phone. And can absolutely 100% recommend that anybody with a smartphone that's got a decent, well, not even a decent camera, it's got a camera on it, go out and get yourself a clip-on macro lens. I don't necessarily just mean for spiders. I mean for anything that you can take pictures of, whatever tiny stuff you find. It's so cool, and it opens up a whole new world that you don't otherwise see. And that's what got me into it. So I started out with a clip-on macro lens for my phone, and as with most things in my life, it snowballed, and I wanted more, and I needed to be able to see tinier and tinier things, and that's why I now have several microscopes and a DSLR camera with a macro lens that actually can see stuff much better than my phone one can. And I get a bit obsessed with these things. So yes, I started taking macro photos so I could get a closer look at spiders and other invertebrates, because there's just so much going on that you can't see properly with the naked eye. So the photos that you see on my spider Instagram are photos that I've taken mostly of the spiders that I keep, but also of some of our local, like, native species here in the UK. I just find it absolutely amazing. It offers me a window into their lives that, has taught me a lot about behavior and about, their things about them that I would never even have known about. It's like a good example of that. I think I realize how creepy this sounds, but I take photos of spiders when I find them courting and mating, just because the behavior is so interesting and I want to sort of learn as much about it as I can. And I noticed in a couple of my photos, some of the jumping spiders that I was keeping and breeding at the time, some of local, like, native species that I found, I noticed that the males, when they had successfully coupled with the females, there was this structure on their pedipalps that I had never seen before, and that you can't see unless they're actually mating. And it looked like a balloon. It was this weird kind of like pale, translucent coloured balloon looking thing, basically. And I was like, whoa, what is that? I've never seen that before. It's called a hematodoca. And basically it's like a kind of almost like a fluid filled like bellows. And the way it's used is like male spiders, they load up their pedipalps when they mature. They're pedipalps, which are like spider hands. Basically, they're not legs, but they look like little miniature legs, and they're sort of either side of the mouth parts of the spider. They kind of use them like hands. But when a male spider matures, his are modified into his reproductive organs. So he actually uses them for fertilizing the female. And what happens is, the very end of those modified pedipalps, there's a very tiny little structure that he loads up with sperm, and that structure then gets inserted into the female, blah, blah, blah. And the hematodoca, what it does is it fills up with fluid and it exerts pressure on that apparatus that's filled with the sperm to help kind of push it out. You know what I mean? So I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen that until I got hold of macro photography equipment and was able to take these photos. And look up the word hematodoca. It's not anything new. People know what it is. People who've been looking at spiders under magnification for years know exactly what it is, but I'd never seen it before, So it's offered me an opportunity to see things that I didn't know about. And because I didn't know about that particular thing, I wouldn't have known to look it up and find out more about it and read about what it actually is, So for someone like me, who, although I'm involved with other scientists and I work with other people in the field of arachnology, I'm mostly by myself. I mostly learn and do all of the things that I do on my own, So it's because of things like that that I'm able to kind of learn about these particular things that I've seen, like through my macro lens. And that's part of why, I've carried on doing it, because it is so extremely educational. And because I can then show it to other people, it's another thing for me to use in my science communication online, like, hey guys, have you ever seen this before? This is super cool, So that's a big part of why I do the photography. And carrying over into the illustration end of things, a lot of it is sheer enjoyment, but it's also the science comes into that as well. It's a way of communicating what I see in another medium. And with illustration, you can communicate it in a pretty unambiguous way. So, I can look at a photograph and recognize certain things because I'm familiar with them. But if somebody who's just learning about these things is looking at it, they might not necessarily see the clear distinction between this structure and that structure. Whereas if I'm illustrating something with the sole purpose of highlighting a particular structure, I can draw it in such a way that it is completely unambiguous and people can see exactly what it is. So the illustration, it plays a dual role in my life. It's science communication, but it's also art. It's also something that I do for my own enjoyment and for other people's enjoyment, purely as like a visual thing to enjoy,
I get it. Yeah.
I mean, as I'm talking to you right now, I've got a couple of things next to me that I was working on before I got onto this chat with you. One is an embroidery of a spider web, and the other is a canvas painting that I'm working on at the moment, which I've posted on Twitter in the last couple of days. I just painted a tiny spider on it. It's a circular canvas with some gold leaf ferns.
Yeah, it's up in the nest tee. I saw that. It's very cool.
Yeah. So I've just been working on that as well, finishing it off. So hopefully tomorrow I should be able to post the finished article. But yeah, I mean, I do all kinds of different things. I make jewelry, I paint, I draw, I embroider, you name it. I do all kinds of stuff, and most of it at some point will focus on spiders.
Got it. I think because the space is all about spiders, instead of calling the nest, I think let's call it the web. So,
yeah.
So if you look up in the web, my amazing co-host has been actually searching your profile, T, and everything that
I've noticed.
And everything
I've
you've
noticed
mentioned.
they're coming up.
Yeah.
She's good at that.
She is
really good at that.
Yeah. I am only half a person when she is not here. So Chris is the star of behind the show. But yeah, if you're listening on mobile, everything that T's mentioned, Chris has found that post in T's profile and put it up in the web. The nest up top there in the Jumbotron. T, can we take some questions from the community now? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So we are now at the question segment. If you have a question for T about spiders, I'm sure she'd love to try and answer. Now, again, because Chris and I kind of make sure that people who come up, we know who you are. If you are a locked account or we don't recognize you, may not get to ask your question. And that's just to keep the space safe and free of trolls and a whole around shenanigans. Somebody in the chat actually had a question. I don't know if Liz is going to come up to ask it or if she's here. Liz, did you want me to ask the question or did you want to ask it with your own voice? I don't know. Maybe you're teaching. I'll give her a second because Liz... 1 second, 2 second. Okay, she probably can't talk. In the chat, Liz says, I have a question. Is there a website you recommend the layperson can use to identify a spider before we panic? So I don't want to squash it, but if it hurts me or my pets, I might squash it. Oh, here's Liz. Liz is here. Liz, did I do your question justice? Go ahead, Liz.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if you could hear me. I didn't hear. Did you read my question?
I did. Yeah, I basically read your question, but you're here to hear the follow-up. So I don't know if you can answer that.
Yeah, sure. So whereabouts are you in the world?
Northern Virginia on the east coast of the state.
Okay, cool. So I don't know if you're familiar with Bug Guide, but
No.
Bug Guide is an extremely comprehensive website that has a lot of information about all kinds of different invertebrates, bugs, spiders included. So you can look up on there. The thing is that if you've got a photograph and you want to do like a reverse image search kind of thing, I think iNaturalist can be quite good for getting close to an ID on it. If you're in North America and your concern is, do I need to panic? Is this going to kill me? The answer is pretty much definitely going to be no. You've only got a couple of medically significant species. I say species, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, there's several species, but genera, we'll say genera. Black widows and brown recluses, they're your biggest concerns in terms of medically significant spiders in the US. Black widows are pretty much unmistakable. And brown recluses are... There's a couple of things, you can look at markings on them or, overall body shape to tell them apart from other brown spiders. But a lot of people get into some trouble when it comes to identifying those if they're not particularly familiar. So there is a website, Spider Bites, spelt with a YBYTES. That is a good one for that kind of information. Also on Twitter, there's an account called Recluse or Not, which is really good for helping get familiar with identifying brown recluses from other different types of spiders that look very similar. But going back to Bug Guide, there's a lot of information on there. So if you can get somewhat close to, a family or something from the photo that you've got, you can have a poke around on there and see what you can find. But honestly, I think the fastest way to get an answer or an identification for anything, and this goes for people anywhere in the world, is going to be Twitter. It's going to be Twitter 100%, because there are loads of people, myself included, who are on there who are more than happy to take a look at a photo that you've got. So you can either direct message somebody like myself or just tweet and tag us in it, and we'll take a look at it and see what we can do in terms of an ID. But that's going to be the quickest way, I think, for somebody who may be in a bit of a panic to get an answer about whether or not they should be concerned.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. My husband's got some slight arachnophobia, and he thinks that everything's a black widow. And like, we had a giant wolf spider in the basement. He's freaking out. I'm like, they're fine. They're not going to do anything. So he pretends like he knows what they are, and I just want to prove him wrong. But thank you.
Twitter, come to Twitter. So show us a picture on here, and we'll help you prove him wrong.
All right, thank you very much.
No worries.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, again, if Chris, are you putting that up in the nest? It says Chris is replying to. I don't know where that's going. Is that into the chat? I'm not sure.
It's going into the chat because I don't, and then I guess I could put it in the nest.
Oh, there, that would work.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. I got a little bit of a cough. I just had to mute my mic there. Is there anybody else who'd like to ask T a question about spiders? Liz had a great one about should we squash it or not, and looks like the answer is probably not if you're in North America.
The answer is always not. There's no need to squash a spider.
Oh, okay.
Really.
Touche.
Yeah, there's no need. And also another thing I'd like to mention while we're talking about spiders in people's homes is please, 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 please stop using glue traps. please stop using glue traps. They are just the most evil, horrible things. And I keep seeing people who've put down glue traps because they're worried about brown recluses, and then they come down and they find that they've got a mouse stuck to it or a snake stuck to it or something, and it's horrendous. There's no need. There really is no need. There's really no such thing as a spider infestation in your house. If you've got a lot of spiders in your house, they're not the infestation. There's something else there that's feeding them. So address whatever they're eating, and the spiders will go elsewhere. But please stop using glue traps, please.
There's some really good comments in the chat. Courtney says, I think spiders are adorable. I always have. And
I'm so glad.
Yeah. And then Funnel Cakes Rule says, listening and feeding my spiders.
Hi, Jen.
Is that, you know this person? Okay.
Yes, I know Jen. I love Jen.
To which somebody replied, Funnel Cakes, thumbs up. Spiders, thumbs up. Funnel web spiders, unsure. Okay. I don't know if there's anybody else that's requesting the mic. I don't know. Maybe people are a little shy about asking you questions today, T. I have one. On the podcast, we talked about, do you have snakes as pets?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Do you want to talk briefly about your snakes?
Oh, I'd be more than happy to talk about snakes.
Okay.
So I've always had snakes since I was about 18 or so. I currently only have the two. I have two Mexican black king snakes. They're amazing. They're so cool. If I may say, I've always been a bit of a size queen when it comes to snakes. Like everything that I've kept in the past has been massive. So my first snake ever was a boa constrictor. And from there, I went on to blood pythons, Burmese pythons, all kinds of different big, heavy-bodied constrictors. And I kind of snoozed on the small ones. So I think it was 2020, after a year or two off from keeping snakes, just because of moving around quite a lot, I got these two, and they're so much fun. They're only small, as far as the kind of snakes I'm used to are concerned, but they're super beautiful. They're jet black. They're like obsidian, and they've got such character. They are absolutely amazing. The thing with these, though, Mexican black kings and other king snakes, is that they are actually snake eaters, and they will cannibalize their own species. So I can't keep them together.
Oh.
I can't really let them meet one another unless I want them to mate, in which case I have to be very careful, because they will absolutely eat one another. So they eat everything, though. I have an affectionate name for them. I like to refer to them as my glossy black garbage disposal tubes, because that's essentially what they are. So they're really cool, though. There's some photos of them on my Twitter as well. I posted a couple earlier, actually, but it was in reply to somebody else. So if anybody is on my Twitter at the moment, I posted a picture of their new vivariums earlier, and if you check out the replies, there's a couple of photos of my male and female amongst the replies to that tweet.
I think, is it the one where you say these two smiley face and look like they're...
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's up in the nest, also known as the web tonight.
Yeah. So those are my only two snakes at the moment, but they're very cool. So
for folks that are from, say, Canada or, Finland, like northern places, what's the deal with a brown recluse spider? Like I know, but if you are not from, I don't know. I know they brown recluse spiders can get up to Canada. They're just super, super, super rare. Are they the ones that cause like your flesh to kind of rot away? Is that okay? So necrotic tissue, or is that wrong, or I don't know.
No. So here's the thing. Spiders in the genus Loxosceles, which is what the brown recluse belongs to, they and other types of spiders have what is known as a cytotoxic venom. So the two main types of venom that spiders possess are cytotoxic and neurotoxic. So neurotoxic venom affects the brain or sort of nervous system. It affects things like, you'll notice if you get bitten by something with a neurotoxic venom that's potent enough to actually make its presence known, you'll notice things like heart palpitations, shortness of breath, that kind of thing. So it's sort of like, that's the kind of effect that has on you. But a cytotoxic venom, cytotoxins cause cell death. So basically, it causes the cells in the area that the venom is present in to die. That's not to say that if you get bitten by a brown recluse, that's definitely going to happen. it's also not to say that it'll happen on a large scale. It's interesting because the effects of a secondary bacterial infection, something like MRSA, are very similar to the damage that a cytotoxin has the potential to do. So a lot of people are very quick to assume that if they have a necrotic lesion as a result of a suspected spider bite, that they've been bitten by something like a brown recluse and it's the venom that's doing that. But it may not be. But yes, I mean, in an absolute worst case scenario, if you are bitten and envenomated by a recluse, its venom does have the capability of causing necrosis in the area of the bite. So yeah, it is something that is possible. It's unlikely. Most of the time, there's not enough venom injected to do that kind of damage. Sometimes the bite is dry, which means no venom is injected at all. So it's kind of hit or miss as to whether or not you're going to notice any kind of necrosis in the site of a bite. But it's very, very unusual that it should be severe. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
As for their presence in Canada and other northern places, it's not unheard of for recluses to, hitchhike their way into certain places that they shouldn't be or that they don't naturally occur in. And depending on what happens, if, for example, a gravid female, gravid being full of eggs, if a gravid female ends up somewhere like, a storage facility or a museum or even a house, somewhere where it's pretty sheltered or whatever, she lays an egg sac and those babies hatch and they're able to survive in, indoor environment, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that you may end up with a small population taking hold somewhere like that. That's how species are able to end up in places that they're not supposed to be and become invasive, but they don't tend to survive outdoors outside of their range that they are sort of naturally occurring in. So in colder climates, they're not going to do terribly well outdoors. So if you end up with if you end up with a situation where you've got some inside, then as much as it breaks my heart to say it, you get an exterminator in to deal with the problem in the building, they're not likely to have gone much further than that building, so they're very unlikely to come back. So like I said, not unheard of that they should end up in places they shouldn't be, but that could be said for anything, really.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure brown recluse spiders will have a rough time in an Alberta winter. So,
yeah. Yeah.
And before we go to Donna Craig, I love that you said the Burmese python as one of your snakes you had. You would not believe how many times Bunsen gets called a Burmese mountain dog. And I'm like, Bunsen's from Burma? Like, what? Like, he's a No, he's a Bernese, not a Burmese. Anyways.
He's a Burmese mountain dog, and I had a Bernese python.
A Bernese python. Can you imagine? It's a python that lives in the Alps. Like, it's a mountain snake.
Wearing a parka.
Yeah, exactly.
A parka tube. Actually, I do have a picture of her wearing what I call her sweater. It was a leg warmer.
Oh,
so she's just wearing a leg warmer. It's absolutely adorable.
That is adorable.
I'll have to get out.
Okay, over to Donna. Go ahead.
First of all, Bunsen is a stage 5 clinger for mommy fave, so Burmese mountain dog's probably a good one for him. So I'm going to tell my story about me meeting a brown recluse spider on my neck. So welcome to Texas, where we have more poisonous species than any other place on earth but Australia. So I had a brown recluse get me in the neck. I swear she was pregnant because I felt like I was going to die. But like you said, I knew right away something got me. It was burning really, really bad, but it was like an acid burn on my neck, where it started like skin started blistering and falling away, but I had hit the emergency room pretty quick and they knew what it was because I brought the spider with me. So they were able to treat it pretty well, but it was a good 2 weeks before that got back to normal. And it seemed like it kept spreading for a bit. And I had all the antibiotics on board. So me and brown recluse spiders, no bueno. So I try not to kill things. I want everything to live, but snakes and brown recluses, no bueno. I also have tarantulas around here. And if you ever want to see a 6'4", 260-pound grown man cry, just open a patio door and have one of those jump 20 feet in the air, which it did. And he slammed that door so fast, he shattered the glass and then ran because the glass shattered and he thought the spider was going to get him. But come visit Texas. You'll have a place to stay. I'll let you take all the spiders back to England with you.
Oh my God, I would love that. Don't say things like that to me because I'll be in your DMs like, so what are you doing next week?
Seriously. Yeah, I travel a lot and I'm around this country all the time, but welcome to Texas. We have all the poisonous snakes and spiders you could love. Copperheads, corals, bring it. It's here.
I would love to come and visit.
Well, open invitation.
Thank you.
There you go. You got a research station in Texas, T.
That's very cool. I will say regarding your recluse bite, that figures. So the fact that you were able to take the spider in with you is the only way you're going to get a solid diagnosis as to what bit you or what the problem actually is. So the fact that you had the spider with you is great. The fact that you got it treated and got your antibiotics and everything quickly is great. But yeah, I mean, you know, if you get a doozy of a bite where it's actually managed to envenomate you and you are actually experiencing the symptoms of, you know, skin necrosis, a couple of weeks is actually pretty good going because, you know, there isn't a treatment that will stop that in its tracks. You just kind of got to work with it, keep the wound clean. Sometimes they need to excise the flesh from the area.
That's what they did. Yeah.
So you'll be.
It was gross.
In that. Yeah, it can be extremely traumatic and it can leave some pretty gnarly scarring as well. So it really is not something to be trifled with. So the fact that you got it treated and everything very quickly is great. But yeah, I mean, everything that you've said is what I would expect from verifiable and, you know, sort of decent recluse bite that has obviously delivered some venom. Unfortunately, a lot of the time people aren't able to provide the spider that did it. And as I mentioned earlier, secondary bacterial infections can manifest very similar, in very similar ways to a recluse bite. So it becomes a game of maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But the problem that we have and the problem that we sort of, you know, spider enthusiasts, arachnologists are up against is that medical professionals are not arachnologists. They're not entomologists. They are just as quick as other people to say, oh, yep, it's a spider bite, with absolutely no evidence of it being a spider bite. So unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who've had an injury of some description and it's been put down on their record as a spider bite with absolutely no evidence to back that up. So the fact that people like you are able to provide a spider to say, yes, this definitely was a spider bite, that enables people to look at cases such as yours and say, right, well, we can say with absolute certainty that this is what can happen from a spider bite with no ambiguity. So that kind of thing is extremely useful.
Yeah, they're lucky I didn't smash it before I brought it in because I am not the fan of spiders. I've seen too many scary movies and just not a fan. But I respect you and your job because we wouldn't have all this information without it. And Kathy said something earlier about you can't get over your fear unless you have information. So this is good, but I know it was trying to kill me.
It was trying to defend itself. It wasn't. It's got no reason to try and kill you, but it does. I do understand why people feel that way about.
It crawled into my sleeping bag. It tried to kill me. That's no defense.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they end up in places that they don't want to be. But it's one of those things. Like these animals, poisonous snakes, venomous spiders. You know, humans are not their prey. if we get bitten by them, they're defending themselves against us. And it may be because they've ended up in a place that they shouldn't have ended up in. However, that's happened. It does happen quite a lot. But, you know, it's one of those things. You're absolutely right when you say, like, knowledge is power when it comes to overcoming one's fears, understanding these things, understanding how they behave, why they behave the way they do, how they react to certain things. It's all extremely useful because it prepares us for, you know, circumstances and scenarios that we may otherwise have panicked in. But if we've had a little bit of an education, a little bit of information on it, we'll know, you know, what to do the next time. Now, of course, there's not really anything you can do if there's a spider underneath you that you don't know is there and it bites you. The first you're going to know about it is the fact that you've been bitten. There's not much you can do about that, unfortunately. But at least if you have a bit of a better understanding about, you know, how these spiders behave, where they live, what kind of spaces they seek out, you know, there may be measures that you can take to try and ensure that you safeguard yourself or your belongings against them from ending up in, you know, say a pair of shoes or a sleeping bag or a handbag or whatever, you know. Or at least know to check thoroughly next time to make sure that there's nobody in a pair of socks or wherever that shouldn't be in there. You know what I mean? It's happened to me before. I put on a pair of leggings last summer and I got all the way downstairs when I realized I could feel something pinching my leg. I said, what is that? And so I pulled my leggings down in the middle of the kitchen and sure enough, there was a spider who was just like pressed flat up against my skin. How it didn't get hurt, I don't know, but the poor thing did not want to be in my leggings, did not want to be pushed up against my skin, and was trying to do all it could do in that moment, which was bite me to let me know, you know. So these things happen, unfortunately. But
T, do you want scorpions? We can send you those too.
I love scorpions. Scorpions are awesome.
Oh my God. So I have one follow-up question, if I may, and then I'll get off. Is it true that spiders lay eggs in your mouth when you're sleeping?
No, absolutely 100% unequivocally false.
Okay, because I have heard that before, and of course that would set me over the edge, and this helps with my fear.
Spiders don't want to be anywhere near human beings if they know that a human being is a human being, if that makes sense. So one may end up on you by accident because it doesn't realize that what it's just walked onto is a gigantic living creature. But the absolute last thing it's going to do is seek out your mouth to lay its eggs in. They don't want to be anywhere near warm, dark, damp orifice that, you know, there's air moving in and out of. They don't want that. That's not what they want.
It's a spooky weird cave to them.
Well, yeah, but it's also, you know, that carbon dioxide that we breathe out suggests that it's something they might want to avoid. So they tend to leave pretty quickly. But spider egg laying behavior it's not just a case of we're just going to drop some eggs here and go. Most of the time, there's quite a complex amount of planning and preparing and spinning of silk and everything. And like some spiders, when they're laying their eggs and creating their egg sacs, it takes hours and hours and hours. So, I mean, you'd have to be out cold for a long time for a spider to feel confident about being inside your mouth and then be able to spin its egg sac and do everything it does. It just doesn't happen. I'm not sure that that's ever been recorded ever. So it's one of those things. It's like an urban myth, an urban legend. I've even seen people talk about people coming home from tropical holidays only to find spiders hatching out from an egg that had been laid under their skin. It's not possible. It's just not possible. So no, that's not a thing.
A botfly.
Yeah, that is a botfly. There are things that will do that to you, but I can tell you right now, spiders are not one of them. And spiders eat those things, which is why spiders are our friends and we should love them.
Yes. Donna, thank you so much for your question. So it's a good idea to bring into the hospital the thing that bit you, but I did that with a Canada goose and they were not happy with me at all. I'll tell you right now. The emergency room said no, and they told me to go. So just be careful what you're bringing into the emergency room. T, do you have time for 2 more questions? Chris brought a couple.
Yes, of course.
Is that okay? All right.
Of course.
We'll go to Kathy and then Hogan. Kathy L. Go ahead, Kathy.
Hi. Further to what Donna was talking about. Hi. I'm in Southern California, and we certainly have our share of black widows and brown widows and the random brown recluse. And I'm just wondering, what kind of environment is the brown recluse found in, attracted to in order to set up shop? I'd really like to try to avoid hosting anything like that on my property. We have all kinds of black widows around here all the time. And I try and keep them away from the house so that, we can go outside safely with our animals and things like that. But my concern is for, these spiders that have a propensity to really injure, and really cause some damage. So the environment is what my question is.
Yeah. So you said you're in Southern California, yeah?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So brown recluses are not an issue. I used to live in Los Angeles, and this was something that I used to come upon quite a lot, is people saying, there's brown recluses in my house. They don't, that's not part of their range. There are other recluse species that occur out in the desert, but they don't tend to end up around human civilization terribly often. But should it happen, should you end up with a recluse in your house somehow, they're very, very shy. As the name would suggest, the recluse name comes from the fact that they shy away from busy areas, from, areas with a lot of footfall, areas with a lot of bright light. So if they do end up in your house, which is extremely unlikely, you're going to want to be checking places like cellars or pantries or closets or anything that doesn't get a whole lot of light or movement or action. They don't spin like a big obvious web or anything. They might have a little retreat in a corner somewhere, but nothing crazy noticeable. They tend to wander around in search of prey more than anything else, and it'll be under the cover of dark. So if you're concerned that there might be a recluse around your property or in your house, my go-to on that would be, I'm almost 100% certain it'll be something else. There are some spiders in Southern California that are very similar looking to a brown recluse, but the chances of you finding an actual genuine brown recluse in your house in Southern California is almost nil. As for the widows, the best thing you can do to keep your property free of widows is sweep away webs. They will only live in their webs. They don't do very well outside of their webs. They can't move around terribly gracefully on the ground or, climb up smooth surfaces or whatever terribly well. They rely on their silk to be able to get around properly. So if you've got a backyard that you're trying to keep free of widows, or if you've got areas around your, front door or your side door, back door, whatever, that you're trying to keep free of widows, make a point of sweeping around that area and getting rid of the webs. Yeah, so if you keep up on that,
that's exactly what we do. Yeah,
that's your absolute best course of action. I mean, if there are areas that you can't sweep terribly easily, then maybe you could use a garden hose or something to hose it down. Just like run some water into hard to reach areas, because the thing is, if you disturb them often enough, they'll get the message that it's not a habitable area and they'll move somewhere else.
Right.
If their web is disturbed enough times, they'll realize that this is, the danger outweighs the benefit of being in that area, so they'll go and find somewhere else. So if you keep on top of your sweeping and hosing things down and just making sure that there aren't any webs present, then you won't have a problem with widows.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. I appreciate that information.
No problem. Anytime.
I do appreciate the information.
Thanks, Kathy. Over to Hogan. Hogan, do you have a question for T?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can indeed. Hello, Hogan.
Hi, T. How's it going?
Hang on. No, wait. Let me do that again. Hello, Hogner.
I've been watching you post your art online, and the only important question I have is, when are you going to come to Minnesota and work with me in my shop, T?
I really need to send my green card back so they'll let me back in the States. Right now, I'm not allowed. I still have my green card in my jewelry box, and until I send that back and get a letter from the US Embassy telling me that they accept that I don't want to move back there, if I show up in the States unannounced, they'll detain me and send me home. So as soon as I've done that, I'll come and see you.
So I guess the real question I had, up here in northern Minnesota, I've seen like wolf spiders and some other stuff. But I remember once when I was a kid, I found a spider that had a a big round body, like it was just round like a big marble. And somebody said that it was some kind of a barn spider. And I figured barn spider is probably like more of a colloquialism and not an actual name. I was wondering if you're familiar with spiders around North America, something that have a big round body that people refer to as a barn spider.
I've never heard the name barn spider before, but anytime I hear of something with a big round body, my first thought is an orb weaver of some description. Because if you look at things like Araneus species and some of the other like similar orb weavers, so not so much the Argiope, the like wasp spiders, they tend to be a little bit more kind of elongated and different shapes. But like the Araneus and its relatives, like Araneus genus and its relatives, are quite rotund. Like the adult females, especially when they're gravid, they can be massive and very, very, very round. Like I said, I've never heard the term barn spider before. Over here, we tend to have different common names for those. Garden spider, cross orb weaver is another one for the Araneus diadematus because of the markings on its back. But there's all kinds of different common names, and they tend to change from region to region. So anything with a big round body, I would be inclined to think orb weaver. Failing that, it would be moving more towards the therideids, so like the widows and their relatives as well, because they're obviously quite plump and round. But I also feel like they're very recognizable and would be referred to as a widow. So I would suspect probably an orb weaver of some description.
So does orb weaver, does that cover like a broad spectrum of spiders? Like, is that?
Yeah. So orb weavers, as a family, there are lots and lots of different genera in the family Araneidae. There are other orb weaver families as well. So it's not just Araneidae. There's also Tetragnathidae. Cyclos, I can't remember what family they're in now, which is terrible. My brain, okay, cut me some slack. Okay, it's 3:15 in the morning.
I know, it's so late for you. You're doing so good. I'm in awe.
My brain is not working. But yeah, there are several different families that spin orb webs, and within those families there are loads and loads of different genera. But they are characterized by the type of web that they weave. So they are famous for their big, flat, round webs that you'll see hung up amongst like different, and they'll have different points that they spin them between. So some species, like they're synanthropic, they like man-made structures because there's corners of windows or door frames or porches or whatever that they can spin a nice big orb web. Some of them prefer to do it amongst branches of trees or shrubs and undergrowth. Find them a lot in the garden, lots of different species of them out in the garden, but they are characterized by that web. So if you've seen any of the embroideries that I've done with the spider web embroideries, just the sort of quintessential spider web that everybody thinks of, that is an orb web. So anything that spins a web like that is known as an orb weaver, but they come in all different shapes and sizes. So those giant Joro spiders that people were talking about a little while ago that are invading America, they're golden orb weavers. They're absolutely gigantic. They spin massive, massive webs. So they're orb weavers, but they're obviously a completely different shape to the ones with the big round body. Some orb weavers are super tiny. Some of them are really, really small. So all different shapes and sizes, all different colors and patterns. They are an extremely diverse bunch of spiders. But yeah, the one thing that they all have in common is the type of web that they spin. So
would orb weavers be like probably one of the more common types of spider then?
Yeah, there's a lot of them around. Going back to the Araneus diadematus, that's very common in the United States as well as across Europe. You see them a lot in sort of this time of year is when they start to reach their adult stage. So from now and sort of onwards through autumn, you'll start seeing some pretty big ones out in the garden around here and in certain areas of the States. I don't know what their distribution is like around your way.
They're up by us. Like we were picking raspberries today, and they were giant orb webs, spider webs were across the raspberry the patches.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised given how far they've spread and how successful they've been in moving around different places. I'd be very surprised if they weren't present, but certainly you're going to have some variety of orb weaver around your way because, like I said, there are so many of them and they are so diverse in, the sort of habitats that they prefer to spin their webs in and also, in their sort of sizes and, I suppose, specialisms. They've managed to successfully breed and sort of colonize areas that are not their natural range. But they do move around quite a lot, and there are a lot of them. So yeah, you are likely to encounter those in just about any place where there's spiders, really.
Great questions, Hogan.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you.
I think we're going to wrap it up right now and respect T's time. She's staying
I
up.
see what you did there. You're going to wrap that up, huh? My
Yeah.
spider friends like doing that.
And snakes, depending on the snake. Just to respect T's time, it's quite late, and wow, just such a great chat tonight. T, thank you for agreeing to come to be our guest today on Science Chat and talk about spiders, and also take questions from people for about, what was that, more than a half an hour. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Anytime. You know, I'm more than happy to talk spiders any given opportunity. I don't care if it's 3:30 in the morning, I'll do it.
There are some unanswered questions in the chat. Can people tweet questions at you? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, yeah. Tweet me anytime, day or night. If you've got a question about spiders, by all means, tweet it to me, DM it to me, whatever. And if I don't respond, it's not because I'm ignoring it. It's because for whatever reason, Twitter is not showing me all of my mentions at the moment. So if you've got a question that you really want an answer to, or you really need an answer to, and you don't get a response from me pretty quickly, nudge me, like send it again, or, you know, comment on one of my tweets and direct me to it or something. It's literally, it'll only be because I haven't seen it, because Twitter's being mean.
Yep. Sometimes we miss stuff all the time. It's a never ending thing. Yeah.
Oh, I bet your account is huge.
It was a pleasure again to talk to you, T. And
thank you so much for having me.
We wish you all the best in the future. And
thank you.
You know, in 6 months or something, we'd love to have you back to talk spiders again.
Hell yeah. And I'll try and come with some new material this time.
You know, what we can do is maybe change the time and do it on the weekend or something, so you're not up so late.
Honestly,
special weekend space for spiders.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about that, but also like late nights are fine by me. My sleeping pattern is absolutely ruined, so I'm usually awake till this time anyway. So if I can talk about spiders instead of sitting around doing nothing, then count me in.
Okay, that's great. I'll keep that in mind.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you everyone for your questions and for being so lovely. And hopefully, I will get to do this again with you all soon.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, one more time, thank you so much to T for being our guest tonight on Science Chat. Thank you to my co-host, Chris, who's doing a great job behind the scenes, putting stuff up in the web, aka The Nest. To our speakers, thank you so much for asking great questions, and for the chat. Really great chat. We had 36 different comments in there. It's always cool to see that when people are engaging in the chat. And to everybody who listened tonight, you could be anywhere in the world and you're listening to Science on Twitter, which is kind of a hard sell sometimes. I mean, I could just put something out about NFTs and we'd get so many crypto bros wanting to talk. Sorry if you're an NFT person. Just kidding. They're important too. This Saturday, there are 2 audio spaces. I'm part of this amazing group of social audio experts called the Conversationalists. Every Saturday at 11 p.m. Eastern, we meet and have a mega podcast where some theme is about, and we all chat about it as a giant group. And the theme this week is movies. So we're going to be talking about movies that move us. And then we are starting up Pet Chat again on Saturday. So Pet Chat is 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's on Saturday. And Chris and I are really looking forward to getting back to talk to everybody about pets. Oh, Chris says 11 a.m. Oh, I said p.m. 11 a.m. is the Conversationalists, not p.m. 11 a.m. Okay, anyways, Pet Chat is this Saturday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And as I was saying, Chris and I are really excited to get back to it, play some games, talk about Bunsen and Beaker, and just gather as a community again. Okay, this is Jason, aka Dad Guy, signing off. Chris, do you have anything else to say before we go? Chris might be wrangling the dogs. Okay, Chris is just giving hearts. Okay, take care, everybody. Be well, be kind, for science, empathy, and cuteness. See you next week for Science Chat.